Welcome CSC230 W1 to ex1. Now I know I called our other exercise ex1, but this will be ex1 lists and links. This will be more of a detailed exercise than just setting up our GourmIDE account, but we'll be working in GourmIDE. We'll be setting up some structure. If you look over here, you can see you're going to create a folder called ex1, and that's going to be where our first exercise is going to be. Now, I know we had an index page in our main directory, but that's just going to lead to this. So we're going to put a link on there that's going to lead to that. And I'll go over all that. We're going to do this from scratch, but I just wanted to show you the finished product. So I'll just click on the index page, the new one, and we're going to put in some filler text. We're going to do some links. We're going to do some lists. Basically, HTML structure and elements we'll go over. We're not going to do much CSS, although we may do a little bit, just to include some inline CSS, just to help our layout just a little bit, but we'll get into CSS with this layout. Now, remember to preview it. As long as you set it up and you check that box that said preview button, you can go here to preview and it'll open up in a new tab. And remember, this is your main directory when you go there. And if you click in there, it'll go to your index page. Now, we're going to put a link that goes to our page, because if you don't, then you have to put in the name of the folder with a /. So that's what we're going to do with this main page that we created the first time around. So when we click here, we're going to have a page like this. Now, it's just very vanilla. Everything's default fonts, default H1s, default spacing, default links, all that kind of stuff. The only thing not default is we're just going to shorten the width of the section that we're working in here. But that's all we're going to have. We're going to have a header image. I'm going to give you a header image that you'll put in there. It'll be in your workspace already, and you could just put it in your page. And then later we'll go over creating your own kind of header and making sure it's the right size and how to get it in there, and we'll do all that. But for now, you could just use the header that I put in your workspace container. And again, there's just going to be an H1, there's going to be a paragraph, there's going to be an H2 and an H2. There's going to be a list of things you like to do in the fall, and then there's going to be a list of shows you like. They could just be recent shows that you watched or something. That's all I did, is just indicate some recent shows that I watched. And they're going to have links so that when you click on a link, it'll open up in a new tab and give a little description of the show. So if you have some show that nobody knows what it is, you can look it up and see a description of it. So that's all it's going to be, is just some basic HTML structure. And then what we're going to do eventually with CSS is target these elements and make it into a nicer layout. But this is all we're going to do for the first part of ex1. So this is kind of the finished product. I'm going to close this up. And in here, I'm actually going to delete all this except for the picture, because you're just going to have a picture when you start. And I'll go over creating the folder, creating the page, working with creating HTML elements using Emmet so that we can use shortcuts to make creating HTML a lot easier and a lot faster. So we're going to go to that next. Now, the first thing you're going to want to do when you log into GourmIDE and you come to your dashboard is run your container, which is the CSC230 W1 container. So you're going to run that, and I'll do everything just like you're going to do. And that took maybe about 30 seconds, 45 seconds to do that. And if your container ever starts up and you see kind of a spinning wheel here and it doesn't show it, just hit refresh. That always seems to fix it. So if it's ever spinning here and it won't stop, just hit the refresh button. But mine's okay. And I'm going to open it up just to see what's in there. And your container should now have, if you did ex1, the first ex1 that was creating the Gourm account and editing the index page a little bit, you should now have an exFallHeader.jpg in there. And you don't have to do anything. You don't have to open it up, but it'll be in that main directory. Now, this is your main container directory. We're going to make a new directory or a new folder. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to go over here and hit new. And we're going to make a new folder. And make sure it's inside of the 230 W1, and it should be, but if not, you should click on that folder and put it in there. And we're just going to call it ex1, lowercase. Don't use any capital letters. Let's just keep things lowercase, ex1. And that's going to be our folder name. That's going to be our directory after this one. So it'll be inside this one. So I'll hit OK. And the first thing I'll do is this image, since we're going to be using this image with ex1, not with anything else, I'm just going to drag it up into ex1. So I'm going to move it. So this image that you have in your main directory, just drag it right on top of ex1 and then just give it a second. It should confirm and hit OK, and then you should see it in there. So you now have a directory or folder inside CSC230 W1. And if you open this up, the only thing in there will be an image. So you don't have any HTML page or anything inside there yet. And that's what we're going to do next, is we're going to make an index page. So before you hit the plus button, make sure you're on top of this. So I'm going to make sure I click on this and then go new and then choose New File, and then name it index.html, and you can see it's going to be inside this directory, index.html, and don't spell it wrong, and don't put any all caps or anything like that. Just call it index.html. That'll be the home page of this directory. And again, we can have multiple index.html pages. And I'll hit OK. And when we do that, there's nothing really going to be in there. Now, where you can go, remember when you go to My Warren, that Shay How, and I'll give you some reading from that, but I'll just go to that page right now. Your HTML, CSS. You could cheat a little bit here in the beginning and kind of look at the structure, building your first web page. Even before you start typing it, but you're going to be reading some of this and talking about terms and elements and tags and attributes and things like that. And you'll see this part here, that's the main structure, and we're going to follow that for now. So we're going to use a Doctype Declaration. It's not really a tag necessarily, so the shortcut may not work for that, but we're going to put a Doctype Declaration that's going to use HTML5. Then we're going to use our HTML elements, then a head element, meta element, title element, and then we're going to work on our body, and we're also going to use some HTML5 kind of identifier elements like section and header. They're just used to kind of group things together. So we'll use those so that when we use CSS, it'll be a little bit easier to identify them. But right now, this is what we're going to kind of follow. So I'm going to go back here and start putting in some code. So the first thing is the Doctype Declaration. And notice it's a self-closing tag. There's no closing tag with it. It just declares the page. And it starts off with an exclamation point. And Doctype, you can put in all caps just like it is, even though I said don't use all caps. Put that in all caps and then HTML in lowercase. And I'll go back here and I'll do that. And I'll actually just start my tag and put an exclamation point and then Doctype. And most of your elements will start coming up in a little like suggestion thing, but this will not. Doctype, and then I'll do a space and I'll do HTML. Now there's things coming up here, but just type HTML, and that's your opening declaration. It won't even be colored like HTML, so that's okay, don't worry about that. But now when I put in an HTML tag, and I'll just type HTML, and I'll use that shortcut where you type HTML and then hit tab. There's our HTML, and I'll hit return or enter, and everything will go inside here. Now here, what we could do is put an attribute, which is going to be lang, and you could just choose lang and then put equals, and then I'll put en. I'll just type an e, and it's giving me a suggestion, and it's giving me the quotes. So if you put the quotes there, sometimes you might get an extra quote by accident. So I'm just going to choose that. So working with these attributes is sometimes helpful. Just kind of put equals and start to type it, and it'll give you a suggestion. So we're going to do that first, and then I'm going to do a head tag. And notice it indents right away because everything is inside the HTML element. So I'm going to do a head. So I'll just type head and hit my tab key, and then I'll hit enter or return. And inside here, we're going to do a meta tag first. So I'll just type meta, and it won't give you any suggestions. So just type meta, and it's just one tag. It's not a opening and closing. If you look at this, you could see meta, again, is a self-closing tag. There's no opening meta, closing meta. We're just going to put charset equals UTF-8, and there'll be little hints that'll happen here. So if I go inside here, I'll say meta, and then I'll put a space, always put a space, and then I'll put charset or charset, and then click on it. And then if you do equals, it should give you, once you start typing, it should give you some hints. So don't put the quotes yet, just type U, and then UTF-8 comes up, and then you could just click on it. And that's it, it's finished. If you accidentally put another quote here, it's going to throw off your other tags and they'll be green. So make sure you don't have 3 quotes, make sure you just have 2. And that looks okay right now. So your HTML tag should be in red if you set it up like I did. So that's one of your head elements that you won't see until we put in a body tag. And then the next one is going to be title, and I could just type title. This is easier than putting all those less than, greater than brackets, and just hit tab. And then the title, we're just going to put ex1 lists and links. And I forgot the one here. And when you use an ampersand, if you want to use an ampersand, even though you can type an ampersand, type ampersand and then AMP and a semicolon. That's a shortcut. And I'll show you where to find these shortcuts for copyrights and ampersands, but that's in purple, that's an ampersand. If you just put the and sign, the ampersand, it'll be in red, almost like it's an error, although it still might work. So I'm going to put lists and links, or you could just type out the word and. You could do that. So that's our title. You don't have to put your name on or anything like that. So that's our head tags. That's all we need right now. We're not putting any CSS or anything in there. So we're not really going to see anything yet. If you want to hit save, you could do Command S if you're on a Mac or Control S if you're on Windows. That'll take away the asterisk and make an X there. And now after the head tag, this is not inside the head tag, but their next structure that we're going to have here, we're going to put a body tag. So I'm just going to hit return and type body and then hit tab. And there's our body tags, and it gives me my opening and closing body tag. And in here, what I'm going to do is put an extra tag, even though it's not showing here, it's just showing body and then H1s and things like that. What we can do is go in here and do something called a header. And a header is just kind of like a div that has a special name called header, because people used to make headers called div equals header or div ID equals header to identify it, but they made a special div called header so you could put header information in there. And we're just going to put our image in there. So I'm going to put header and then hit my tab key. And again, I'll hit enter so that it's kind of creating this inside out structure here. So header is nested inside there. Now header is different than head. Header is basically a header type element, and we're just going to put an image in there. And I'm not even going to put it in a paragraph. I'm just going to put the image in there. Now to put an image in, I'm just going to type in img and then hit tab. And it gives me my source and it gives me my alt. Now here's another self-closing tag. And the source is basically the address of the image. And alt is just a description of the image in case somebody can't see the image, or if they're using text readers to read what's on the page or anything like that. So alt you can just put in, fall header image, because that's what it's going to be. And it doesn't matter if you put uppercase, lowercase, it doesn't really matter. It's only going to show up either as text or if the image never loads. Fall image header, I'll just put that in. So that's just a description. That's not anything that you're really going to see. Now the source is the address. Now this address is not on the web. It's actually right here in our directory. And what we're going to do is just make sure that we just put the image name. And I guess I'll just type it. There should be a way we could copy the text from here, but I'll just go in here and put ex1. I don't know if it'll come up and recognize it. Dash fall header, and it's not coming up, so I'm just going to have to type it correctly. And fall header.jpg. So it has to be exactly like it is there, and it's in quotes because that's the file name. And I don't have to put a directory because I'm in the same directory. My index page is in the same directory as of my image. If it was in an image folder, I'd have to put image / and then the name, but I just have to put the name. I don't have to put any URL because it's local to this. It's relative to this. This is a relative link or a relative image source. It's relative to where it's at, so that's why you only need the file name. Again, it's a self-closing image tag, so we don't have a closing image tag. That's the only thing going in the header right now. I'll spread this out so I have a little more room here. Eventually, everything won't fit nicely like this, especially when we put in paragraphs. But that's our header. Again, is just an identifying area. Now what I'm going to do is put something inside body. This is all going to be inside body, and I'll put something called section. I'll just put section for now. And I'll hit tab, and I'll hit return so that everything now will be inside a section. And then we'll make a footer then too at the bottom, just so we get used to using some of those HTML5 identifying elements. Now, what we're going to do next, if you remember what it looked like, there was just a headline that said ex1 lists and links. Now, this is different than the title. This title is what's going to show up on your tab when it opens in a new tab. Now, this is going to be a headline, and I'm going to put H1 and then hit tab. And we're just going to put, and you could put a capital letter, or although since we're using ex small, I'll keep it small, ex1 lists and links. And you could use that ampersand thing again, ampersand AMP, semicolon, and that's all you really need. And then after this, we're just going to throw in a paragraph just to practice putting in a paragraph. So then I'm going to put a P and hit tab. And where you're going to go to get this paragraph, you don't have to type a bunch of stuff. You're going to go open up a new tab, and it's going to be blind text generator. Now, all this stuff is under documents and resources. So if you can't find the textbook we're using or blind text generator, there's all links for that, but I'm just typing them in and they're coming up right away. So blind text generator. And we've used this before. And I'm just going to make a paragraph. If this says 200, change it to 100. We're just going to make one paragraph, and we're just going to copy it and leave it lorem ipsum, which is just this stuff here. Now, don't display p tags because we have p tags. We just put them in there. If we didn't have p tags, we could actually copy them too. And I'm just going to copy this and just be like placeholder filler text. So I'll do select all, copy to clipboard, and then just go back here, and I'm just going to paste it here. And there it is. Now, it doesn't look nice because now it's going to the edge and stuff, but it's putting a paragraph in there. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to save it. I'll do Command S because I'm on a Mac. And let's take a look at this now and see what we have so far before we do any lists or anything like that. So all that we should have is a header, a headline, and a paragraph is all that should be here when we go to look at it. So it's saved. So it has the X, so it's saved. And let's just preview this. Now, when we preview, it's going to our main directory, and if we go in here, it's going to that first index page, and you might be thinking, well, how do I get to ex1? Well, we have to put ex1 after this. Now, we're eventually going to put a link here, but for now, if you want to see your page, go ex1. Now, one thing you have to do, if you just put ex1 and you hit enter, at least I've had this issue, it doesn't do anything. It gives me a spinning wheel. Make sure you put the /. So I guess in Gorm, it needs to know that that's a folder, that it's a directory. So make sure you put / and then hit OK, and then it should show you what's going on here. Now, this is our image, this is our headline, this is our paragraph, and it goes across the page. And we're going to shorten this. We're going to throw in a little bit of CSS inline, meaning we're just going to put it in our section and say keep everything as wide as the picture is. Now, our picture, I think, is 800 pixels wide. When we take a look at it. If you double click on it, I think it'll give you that information. But it's 800 pixels wide, the image that I give you. So we're going to make everything 800 pixels wide. So I'm going to keep this open right now. And remember, every time you save something and you want to look at it again, you have to hit refresh or reload. So I'm going to go back here, and now I know things are working here. And I'll just put my first little bit of CSS in here. I'm going to put it inside this section element. Now, I could put it in the paragraph element, but I'll make sure that everything is only as wide as the picture. And I'm just going to use a little CSS. This is inline. This is the only thing we're going to do so far. And make sure you put a space. And I'm going to put style, because that indicates we're using CSS. And we have to put equals. I don't know if it'll come up here. I think because we're using CSS inside an HTML tag, it's not giving me hints. So I'm going to, after I put equals, I am going to put quotes. And because this is not an attribute, really, necessarily. But what we're going to put is CSS in here, and I'm going to put with, and then a colon, not a semicolon, and I'll put 800 pics, and a semicolon to finish it. So there's a colon in between with and 800 pixels, and there's a semicolon finishing it off, and this whole kind of CSS kind of declaration is inside quotes. And style is indicating that it's a CSS declaration. We won't do this a lot, but I'm just doing this now just to show you how inline CSS works. So I'll save it, and I'll go back here and refresh it, and now you can see this is shortened to 800 pixels. Now, I'm going to close this. I'm not using any more dummy text, so I'm going to close that so I don't have too many tabs open. We still may go back to here to the online textbook to look at some things here, but I'm going to go back to my page and go back to my index. Now, remember, this ex1 is inside CSS230W1. We're eventually going to link that. Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to put a couple lists for things we'd like to do in the fall, and then we're going to put a list of links of shows. I know they're not really related. I've done that in the past, so I'm just going to do it again because it's similar to things that I've done in the past. We're just using Gorm this time. So that's what we're going to do next. So if you're at this point, you're in good shape. So if you have something that looks like this, you're off to a good start. Remember, you're in this directory, and then that's the next directory. That's the next directory that you're inside, and you don't have to put index.html because it knows that it's going to go to the first index.html page in that directory. Now, if you spelled it wrong, it's not going to go there. It won't be able to find the page. But now it does because we do have an index page in there. So just keep track of your index. Remember, this is the one that's inside of there, and it's even showing you your breadcrumb trail appear. You're in CSC230 W1, you're in the ex1 directory, and this is the index.html. So if you ever have like multiple index pages open, when you click on them, it'll show you which one you're in. So just be careful of that when you do that. So I'm going to make sure this is saved, and what I'm going to do is I'll take a break here because the video is probably getting a little bit longer. And in part 2, we're going to finish this all up. So I'll come back and finish this up in part 2.